My name's Emily, and if you're expecting a story about fairy tale princesses, you're in the wrong place. My life started pretty standard. I was born to Joe and Linda, just a regular kid in a small town where everyone knew your name, or at least pretended to. My dad, Joe, was the local go-to guy for any car trouble. His hands were always stained with grease, but he had this smile, the kind that made you think everything was gonna be alright. Mom, Linda, she was part-time at the library and the rest of her time was all about making our little world better. Remember, kindness costs nothing but means everything, she'd say, dropping one of her pearls of wisdom while I was trying to figure out my math homework. Our house was nothing fancy. Imagine a cozy little place that always smelled like something was baking. That was us. Not rich, but not wanting either. Life took a hard left turn when I was 10. My parents were driving home from their anniversary dinner when it happened. A drunk driver. Just like that, they were gone. I moved in with Aunt Sarah after that. She was Dad's distant cousin, lived in a house that seemed to creak and complain more than it stood. Aunt Sarah was a tough cookie, worked odd jobs to keep us afloat. The house, it was like time forgot about it, and fashion? That ship sailed long before it reached our shore. My clothes were hand-me-downs from a time when Aunt Sarah thought bell-bottoms were a revolution. Kid, you gotta toughen up. World's not gonna hand you anything on a silver platter, Aunt Sarah'd say, her voice rough, but not unkind. We'd sit at the table, an assortment of mismatched chairs, and eat whatever concoction she'd managed to put together. Money was tight, but Aunt Sarah always made sure we had enough. Thanks, Aunt Sarah, I'd mumble, pushing food around my plate, lost in thoughts of what could have been. Moving in with Aunt Sarah meant a new school and a whole new set of problems. My first day felt like walking into a lion's den wearing a steak suit. The school was bigger than my old one, and it buzzed with the kind of energy that made my stomach twist into knots. I remember standing at the entrance, clutching my bag like a lifeline, when I first saw Jessica. She had that look, like she owned the place. And in a way, she did. "Who's the new girl?" I heard her ask, her voice dripping with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Her friends shrugged, their eyes scanning me like I was some exhibit. "Looks like she got her clothes from the lost and found," one snickered, and they all laughed. I wished the ground would swallow me whole. Classes were a blur. I tried to keep my head down, but Jessica made that impossible. "Hey, thrift store, answer number 4. She said loudly in math class, making everyone turn to look at me. I stuttered out an answer, feeling my face heat up as the teacher nodded, telling me I was correct. That just made things worse. "Lucky guess," Jessica muttered, loud enough for her friends to hear, and they snickered. Lunchtime was no refuge. I found a corner in the cafeteria, hoping to become part of the scenery. But Jessica and her crew made a beeline for me. "Look, she's trying to hide." "How cute," Jessica said, her voice oozing fake sweetness. I kept my eyes on my food, wishing I could disappear. "Cat got your tongue? Or are you just too poor to talk?" she taunted. I mumbled something about not being hungry, and got up, leaving my half-eaten lunch behind. I could feel their eyes on me as I walked away, their laughter echoing in my ears. The days turned into weeks, and not much changed. I kept to myself, dodging Jessica and her friends whenever I could. Aunt Sarah noticed I was quieter than usual. "What's eating you, kid?" she asked one evening, her eyes narrowing as she looked at me over her glasses. "Nothing, just tired," I lied, picking at my food. "You can tell me, I'm not just your aunt, I'm your friend too," she pressed, her voice softer now. I shook my head, not wanting to burden her with my school problems. She had enough to worry about. "If you say so," she said, but her eyes told me she wasn't convinced. Back at school, I found a small sanctuary in the library. It was quiet, and most importantly, Jessica rarely ventured there. I'd spend my lunches tucked away between the shelves, losing myself in books. One day, while I was reading, a boy from my class, Tom, walked in. He was quiet, not one of Jessica's crowd, but not exactly an outcast either. "Hey, you're Emily, right?" he asked, his voice cautious. I nodded, surprised he knew my name. "I've seen how Jessica and her friends treat you. It's not cool," he said, looking genuinely concerned. I shrugged, not sure what to say. No one had acknowledged the bullying before, let alone sympathized with me. "You shouldn't let them get to you. They're just bored and mean," he added, pulling a book from the shelf. Tom's words were a small comfort in the storm that was my school life. It was nice to know not everyone was against me, even if it didn't stop Jessica's taunts. Despite the daily grind and the constant dodging of Jessica and her crew, I had this one thing that kept me grounded: singing. It wasn't something I flaunted. Heck, it was more of a secret than my stash of chocolate bars. Singing was my escape, a way to let out everything bottled up inside without making a mess. Aunt Sarah had an old radio that picked up more static than music, but on good days, it caught the local station that played everything from country hits to old rock ballads. Those were the nights I cherished, alone in my room, the music blending with my voice as I sang along to songs, feeling every note and word. One evening, Aunt Sarah caught me. I was belting out a tune, lost in the music, when I turned around and saw her standing at the doorway, a surprised look on her face. "Girl, why didn't you tell me you could sing like that?" she asked, her usual tough demeanor softened by genuine astonishment. I shrugged, feeling my cheeks heat up. "I dunno. Just something I do for me, I guess." Aunt Sarah walked in and sat on the edge of my bed, the mattress creaking under her weight. "You've got a gift, Em. You shouldn't keep it hidden." I fidgeted with the hem of my shirt, not sure how to respond. Praise, especially for something so personal, felt foreign to me. "Thanks, Aunt Sarah. But who's gonna listen to a nobody like me?" I replied, trying to laugh it off. She shook her head, her expression turning serious. "Don't talk about yourself like that. You're not a nobody. You've got something special, and you don't need anyone's approval to shine." It was hard to believe her. At school, I was less than a nobody. But in those moments, with just the hum of the radio in the background, I allowed myself to dream a little. The next day at school, during lunch, I found myself sitting alone again. Tom, the boy who had been kind to me before, came over with his tray and sat down. "Hey, Emily. Mind if I join you?" he asked, his smile friendly. I shook my head, grateful for the company. "No, not at all. Thanks." We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Tom spoke up again. "I heard you humming the other day. You've got a nice voice," he said casually, picking at his food. I felt my face go red. "Oh, that. It's nothing, really. Just humming." Tom looked at me, his eyes earnest. "You should give yourself more credit. I think you're really good." I laughed nervously, not used to the attention. "Thanks, but I'm not sure singing in the school hall counts as really good." He shrugged, a grin playing on his lips. "Maybe not, but it's a start. Ever think about joining the school choir or something?" As I made my way to class, his words echoed in my head. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. But old habits die hard, and my courage wasn't ready to stand up to Jessica's scrutiny, let alone a crowd. After high school, my path didn't lead to college or some grand adventure. Instead, I landed a job as a cleaner in one of those fancy office buildings downtown. The kind with glass doors so shiny, you'd hesitate to touch them for fear of leaving a smudge. It was a world away from anything I'd known, filled with people who carried themselves like they were the main characters in a movie where I'd be lucky to get a walk-on part. The job was straightforward: show up before dawn, clean until the offices began to fill, and then vanish before I became too visible. It was as if I moved in a parallel universe, one where I was a ghost, seen but not acknowledged. Days turned into weeks, and the routine became my life. Wake up, clean, go home, and then do it all over again. The interactions with the office workers were minimal. One evening, Aunt Sarah noticed my quiet contemplation over dinner. She had that way of looking at you, like she could read all the things you didn't say out loud. "What's on your mind, Em?" she asked, her voice cutting through the silence of our small kitchen. "Just thinking about work," I replied, pushing my food around the plate. "Anything specific?" "You've been quiet lately, quieter than usual," she prodded, her eyes sharp and concerned. I sighed, not sure how to explain the loneliness of being unseen or the strange comfort I found in that brief moment of acknowledgement. "It's nothing, really. Just, sometimes, I feel like a ghost there." Aunt Sarah frowned, putting her fork down. "You're no ghost, Emily. You're real, and you matter. Don't let how those folks treat you make you feel any less." Her grip was firm, grounding. It reminded me of the strength I'd forgotten I had. Maybe I was a ghost in that office, but to Aunt Sarah, I was as real as it gets. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start changing how I saw myself. Life as a cleaner in a high-rise filled with the city's movers and shakers wasn't exactly what I had dreamt of as a kid. But it paid the bills, or at least most of them. The monotony of my days was broken only by the brief nods or half-smiles from a few kind souls, but mostly I was just a shadow, moving silently through the corridors and offices. That all changed the day Ms. Anderson arrived. She was the new director of the company, a position that usually meant more suits, more demands, and less recognition for someone like me. Except, Ms. Anderson wasn't like the rest. It was late, another long day of scrubbing and cleaning, when I first met her. I was emptying trash bins in the deserted offices when she walked in. Most would have just passed by without a word, but not Ms. Anderson. "Working late, I see. Thank you for keeping this place spotless," she said, her voice warm and appreciative. I almost dropped the trash bag in surprise. "Oh, no problem. It's just, my job, you know?" She smiled, a genuine one that reached her eyes. "Yes, but it's hard work, and I want you to know it doesn't go unnoticed." I didn't know what to say. No one had ever thanked me like that before, especially not someone in her position. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. That means a lot," I managed, feeling my cheeks heat up. She nodded, then glanced at her watch. "Late hours, huh? Must be tough balancing life with such a demanding schedule." I shrugged, a bit uncomfortable with the attention. "It's okay. Gotta do what you gotta do, right?" Ms. Anderson's expression softened. "True. But everyone deserves a break now and then. How about we work out a more flexible schedule for you? Maybe split your time between here and the store next door? They're looking for someone, and it could be a good opportunity for you to earn a bit more without stretching yourself too thin." I blinked, surprised by her offer. "Really? That would be amazing, Ms. Anderson. Thank you." She smiled. "It's settled then. I'll speak to the store manager tomorrow. Don't thank me yet, though. You earned this." Walking home that night, I felt lighter than I had in months. Ms. Anderson's kindness was a beacon in the fog that had become my life. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Working 2 jobs was tiring, but the change in routine was refreshing. With the extra money, I allowed myself the luxury of buying some new clothes and even got a haircut. It wasn't much, but it made a world of difference in how I saw myself and, apparently, how others saw me too. The first day I walked into the office with my new look, I caught a few surprised glances from my coworkers. Even the stoic Mr. Jenkins, who barely ever acknowledged anyone, did a double take. "Emily, is that you? You look different," he said, his usual gruff tone tinged with something like respect. I smiled, feeling a newfound confidence. "Yeah, it's me. Just thought it was time for a change." "Well, it suits you. Keep up the good work," he replied, before heading into his office. Those few words, simple as they were, felt like a victory. I was still the same Emily, but for once, I didn't feel invisible. Working those night shifts turned into something special for me, like I'd found a little slice of freedom where I could just be me, singing my heart out in the empty corridors. The acoustics in that place? Unreal. It felt like singing inside a grand cathedral, except it was just an office building after everyone had gone home. One night, while I was lost in the music, belting out tunes as I mopped, I didn't realize I wasn't alone. The boss, Ms. Anderson, was also a night owl, preferring the quiet of the office to get her work done. She stumbled upon me mid-chorus and was, to my surprise, blown away. "Emily, that was incredible," she said, her eyes wide with what I could only guess was genuine amazement. I nearly jumped out of my skin, embarrassed to be caught like that. "Oh, shoot. I'm sorry, Ms. Anderson. I didn't think anyone was here." "I'll, keep it down." "No, don't you dare," she insisted, her voice firm but kind. "You've got something special, Emily. Ever thought about auditioning? Like, for real?" The thought had crossed my mind, sure, but fear always had a way of keeping me grounded. "No way," I laughed it off. It's just for fun, you know?" But Ms. Anderson wasn't having any of my excuses. "You need to do something with that voice. It's too good to be hidden away in here." I appreciated her words, but my nerves weren't ready for that kind of leap. "Thanks, but I don't think I'm cut out for that sort of thing." Fast forward to another late shift, and there I was, humming away, thinking I was alone again. Suddenly, this enthusiastic voice breaks through. "Wow. That voice. You've got talent." I spun around, heart racing, to see this guy with the kindest eyes giving me the biggest grin. I was mortified, my face must have been 50 shades of red. Before I could bolt, Ms. Anderson popped out from her office. "Emily, meet my brother, the music producer. I told you I had a surprise for you." Her brother, huh? This was her idea of a surprise? My knees felt like jelly. He stepped forward, all smiles. "That was something else, hearing you sing. How about you come audition at my studio? There's no pressure, but I think you've got something worth exploring." My brain was screaming, "Run," but something in his gaze, so warm and encouraging, made me pause. I don't know," I stammered. "I've never done anything like that before." Ms. Anderson nudged me gently. "What's there to lose, Emily? Give it a shot." Standing there, between my boss and her brother, something clicked. Maybe it was time to step out of the shadows, to see what I could do if I let go of the fear. "Okay," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll try." Taking that leap, deciding to audition at the studio, was like stepping off a cliff and hoping I'd sprout wings on the way down. The day of the audition, my nerves were shot. I showed up at the studio, a nondescript building that belied the dreams being made inside, clutching my little notebook of songs like a lifeline. Ms. Anderson's brother, Mark, met me at the door with a smile that was meant to be reassuring. "Ready to knock 'em dead?" he joked, leading me inside. I managed a weak smile, my stomach doing flips. "Ready as I'll ever be," I said, though my voice betrayed the quiver of my nerves. The studio was cool and dim, filled with equipment that looked both intimidating and exciting. Mark introduced me to a small panel of people who would be listening. "Don't mind us," one of them said, a woman with a kind face. "Just do your thing." Easier said than done, I thought. But as the music started, something magical happened. My nerves melted away, my voice found its strength, and the song flowed through me like I was born to do just this. When I finished, the room was silent for a heartbeat, too, then erupted into applause. "Wow," Mark said, his eyes wide. "Just, wow." I blushed, overwhelmed by the response. "Thank you," I murmured, barely loud enough to be heard. Mark walked me out afterward, his excitement palpable. "Emily, that was incredible. We need to talk about what comes next." "What comes next?" I echoed, the reality of what was happening starting to sink in. "Yes." Mark was practically bouncing on his heels. recording, an album, gigs, the whole 9 yards. You're what we've been looking for. The next few months were a whirlwind. Recording sessions became my new normal. I poured my heart and soul into every track, driven by a mix of fear and exhilaration. And when the album finally dropped, it was like a bomb went off in my life. Suddenly, I was everywhere: radio, TV, online. My stage name, Erica Clark, became a byword for fresh talent, my songs the soundtrack for countless lives. It was surreal, watching my face on screen, hearing my voice on the radio, and knowing it was me they were all talking about. One night, after a particularly successful gig, Mark found me backstage, a massive grin on his face. "You did it, Emily. You're a star." I laughed, the sound mingling with the residual adrenaline from the performance. Feels weird, doesn't it? Yesterday's cleaner, today's sensation. Mark clapped me on the back. That's how talent works, it doesn't matter where you come from. It's where you're going that counts. Years had flown by since my high school days, each one bringing its own set of challenges and triumphs. Yet, when the invitation to the high school reunion landed in my mailbox, it felt like stepping back in time. I hesitated at first, memories of those difficult years flooding back. But something inside me stirred, a curiosity to face the past, now that I had found my voice and my place in the world. I decided to go, but not as the country star Erica Clark everyone knew from the screens and radio waves. Instead, I slipped back into my old, simpler clothes, the ones that reminded me of where I came from. It was my way of testing the waters, to see if perceptions had changed, to see if I had truly moved beyond the girl I once was. Walking into the reunion, the buzz of conversation and laughter hit me like a wave. I scanned the room, recognizing faces that had aged but remained the same in so many ways. And then I saw her, Jessica, the queen bee of my teenage years, surrounded by a familiar crowd. "Emily? Is that you?" she asked, her tone dripping with the same condescension I remembered all too well. "Heard you've been cleaning up, literally. Still playing with mops and buckets?" The crowd around her laughed, a harsh sound that once would have made me shrink. But I stood my ground, feeling a smile spread across my face. "Actually, Jessica, cleaning's honest work. Not everyone's lucky enough to find something they love doing." A murmur of surprise rippled through the onlookers. Jessica's smile faltered, her eyes searching mine for a hint of the girl she used to torment. "She didn't find her. And what about you, Emily? Any dreams come true, or are you still living in your fantasy world?" she prodded, her voice laced with mock concern. Before I could answer, the room's attention was diverted to the entrance. Mark, my producer and now husband, walked in, his presence commanding and assured. The room went silent, every pair of eyes turning to him, then back to me in disbelief. "Sorry I'm late, love," Mark said, his voice carrying easily over the sudden quiet, reaching for my hand. "Traffic was a nightmare." Jessica's mouth hung open, her composure slipping. "Mark Anderson? A famous music producer? Your husband," she managed to squeak out, her eyes wide. "Yes, my husband," I replied, my voice steady and clear. "And my partner in more ways than one." Whispers filled the room, a mix of shock and awe, as people started putting the pieces together. "So Erica Clark is our Emily? That Erica, the country star? Damn me, Erica Clark herself and her husband." I felt a surge of pride, not for the fame or the success, but for the journey that had brought me here, to this moment of undeniable truth. Jessica stepped forward, a false smile plastered on her face. "Emily, I had no idea. I'm happy for you. Maybe your husband could listen to me sing sometime? I've been working on my voice." The irony of the moment wasn't lost on me. "Jessica, finding your voice is about more than singing. It's about who you are, standing up for yourself, and not tearing others down. As for singing, well, maybe start with singing for yourself, not for what others can do for you." Her face fell, the reality of my words sinking in. The crowd around us began to dissipate, conversations resuming, the moment of drama fading into just another reunion story. Mark squeezed my hand, a silent message of support and love. "Ready to go?" he asked, his gaze warm. I nodded, taking one last look around the room. "Yeah, let's go home." Walking out of that reunion, I realized that the approval I once sought from those very halls no longer mattered. I had found my voice, my strength, and, most importantly, I had found myself. And that was all the recognition I needed.